It's a delight to have with us Mr. Vijay Valecha, CIO at Century Financials. Welcome with us, Mr. Vijay. Mr. Vijay, of course, at the beginning, we have to talk about the results of the banks in the banking sector in the UAE. How was it affected by the income tax that has been imposed and the corporate tax that has been imposed too?
Well, the results have been spectacular. We have not seen such results from UAE banks ever since they have been listed on an exchange. We have seen results coming out from the FAB, ADCB, ENBD, almost the best results we've ever seen. The total assets we saw actually were almost 4.2 trillion AED in February 2024. That's the highest number seen in total assets. We also see the credit numbers for the banks at 2 trillion dirhams plus in February 2024, which also is a record. There definitely will be speed bumps coming along with the way with the corporate tax and the income taxes coming in. But given the strong headwinds that we are seeing of the growth sector in the UAE, of oil as well as the non-oil sectors, might just compensate and we might not see a down round year for the banks this year.
Mr. Vijay, this tax comes at the time that we have the corporate tax put in force, and it had a clear impact on the results of the corporations in the first quarter of this year. Today, if we are to look into the results, of course, we know that the banks are different than the companies. We have an income tax and we have the cost of credit, which is still a big part. To what extent do you believe that the companies will have a bigger impact in the coming period from this tax?
So the bigger impact definitely will be coming in from the corporate tax side. The corporate tax side would have put a much smaller dent because the credit would have been cheaper. We did expect 3 rate cuts from the Fed this year, but however, the year has progressed. We are already in the 5th month of the year, and still there are no sign of rate cuts. We might see 2 rate cuts. The market is still factoring in 2 rate cuts for this year. Given that scenario, the dent of corporate taxes will be obviously much higher on the banks. Given that story, there's one thing that has actually changed a lot in the last few years as well. There is corporate tax for all the other companies as well, all other sectors as well. That growth will also be dented because of these corporate taxes. But there's a lot of finances flowing from outside the country. So foreign institutional investors are investing heavily in the UAE. And that basically will be the extra flow needed to make sure that the results are not bad in spite of the new corporate taxes coming in.
Mr. Vijay, at the same time, we do have a number of foreign banks that do operate in the UAE, and there has been a decision to impose a 20% tax on the foreign banks, contrary to the local banks. Therefore, to what extent you do believe that this is a factor, let's say somehow, that does not catalyze and maybe compared to other countries and other taxes, this tax is acceptable?
So most of the foreign banks in UAE are either from Europe, the European region, or the US region, where they are already subjected to these kind of taxes. The 20% taxes are obviously a much bigger jump than what we had expected from the 9% corporate tax coming in. But given that said, even then, the countries that they operate in and they actually are originating from, the income tax levels are much lower in the UAE, and still they will be definitely incentivized to increase operations in the UAE.
In your opinion, Mr. Vijay, today, in light of this tax that is being imposed, we can see that for the corporates and the businesses, they are adopting new trends, perhaps in order to reduce the impact of this tax. Because for the first time, they have an additional cost that they weren't bearing before, because the corporate tax started to be implemented in the beginning of this year. How do you read that?
It's very similar to when the UAE had introduced the VAT of 5%. There are obviously teething issues to anything which is new. There are obviously a lot of pushbacks to any cost which comes in new to a corporation. But over time, these costs do get absorbed, and in general, they don't really impact the earnings of a company. On the banking or the financial sector, it might be actually a boon rather than a curse, because we actually will see that a lot of inflows are coming in. Those inflows are coming because of the taxation policies that the UAE has adopted. Being a tax originating country now, instead of being a tax free country, gives a lot more for UAE to offer for people who are actually investing from outside the country. Given that scenario, yes, businesses and corporates will be affected in the short term, but like I said, these are very small teething issues which everybody will learn and get over in a couple of years' time.
The tax expenditure on the banks from the income tax was above 200% in the Abu Dhabi banks, and in Dubai above 150. So how will these banks try to compensate for these expenditures?
Well, the whole idea of when a new taxation is announced, it is, I would say, definitely a smart thing to hire in more chartered accountants. Trying to find better ways to actually get the lower taxation at almost every level possible. But that being said, the honest answer over a longer period of time is only growth of business. So taxes are usually only absorbed because there's increase of growth of businesses. And that's what we are seeing in the UAE. It's quite a turnaround story ever since COVID. And we have seen so much growth coming in that these taxes, although will be a dent, but definitely will be absorbed over time, is because the growth story is very, very high. At the same time, we do see that UAE banks are so well capitalized. The loan to debt ratio of almost all major banks is less than 80-85 levels. That being said, the capitalization makes the banks really safe as well. So when we actually look at a new regime, we have to look at 2 or 3 certain things. One is, of course, is there actually growth to absorb these taxes, which actually is there in the UAE right now. Second is, we have to look at, are these banks well capitalized that we don't see a bank run in case anything wrong happens in the economy. Because we are seeing certain situations that if interest rates don't drop and inflation still persists on the upside, we might have not a very soft landing on the US economy, which obviously brings a spillover effect to the UAE. But that being said, the capitalization of the UAE banks is so good that this impact can easily be absorbed. So given these scenarios in mind, it's not a really very bad situation to be in with these taxes coming in.
Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Vijay Valecha, the CIO at Century Financial. It was a great pleasure having you with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.